You didn't get to where you are by playing small. You got here by outworking, outthinking, and outleading the room. But the higher you climb, the harder the questions get, and nobody hands you a playbook for this level. Welcome to Full Strength Leader, the podcast for executives, high performers, and leaders who refuse to coast, with surface-level leadership advice and ready to do the real work. Hi, I'm Kabrina Ashley, applied neuroscience practitioner and leadership consultant, and this is where I bring you the intersection of science and strategy and where real leadership gets built. Every episode, I bring you the research, the real talk, and the frameworks you need to lead at your absolute best, even when things feel upside down and on fire. Because half-strength leadership isn't an option. This is Full Strength Leader. When was the last time you said something to your team about AI? Not a forwarded article, not a Slack reaction, not a quick mention in passing. I mean, an actual conversation where you stood in front of them on purpose and talked about what is happening in your industry to their work and the part of their lives they spend at this job. Because a lot of times we think that AI is just, it's here, we're dealing with it. We're not really thinking about the repercussions of what that means for other people. Because if you can't remember having this conversation, I want you to sit with that for a second. Because while you have been thinking of yourself as careful or measured or thoughtful, your team has been writing the story for you. And the story they're writing is almost always worse than anything you would have said out loud. In today's episode, I want to talk about why so many good leaders are going quiet about AI right now, what that silence is actually doing to the people who work for you, and what you can say in your next team meeting, even when you do not have answers. I'm going to hand you a script so that you can walk through it with your team and not feel like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be like? Because of the fact that I don't know what's happening next, because none of us do. You can change it and you can make it sound like you, but the bones are going to be there. I'm Kabrina Ashley, and this is Full Strength Leader. And as we always say, this is Leadership Unfiltered. So today we're going to have that conversation at the water cooler about this big technology thing that is changing the landscape of work. It's changing it from how we look at resumes, how people are hiring, how people are getting rated on those resumes. There's lots of research that's surfacing about ATS and things like that. And then we also have this, can AI do my job for me? And what does that mean for me as a knowledge worker, as somebody in a corporate setting, as somebody who is not doing something that AI can't do, like wood carving? We can't do that yet. But here's the thing that we're talking about from a corporate standpoint is we're watching in big masses, people getting let go, people getting the companies just going down and saying, okay, hey, we're not going to do this. We're not going to have these employees because we've invested all this money into AI, which is great. But now everybody's very scared and clammed up about what is happening next. I want to start with something I've been seeing on coaching calls for almost a year now. Different industries, different titles, different companies, but the same conversation, almost word for word. And this can be anything from a manager to a senior leader, and oftentimes a VP or above is sitting down across from me, and somewhere about 20 minutes in, the real stuff starts to come out. They tell me very honestly that something is off with their team. People are quieter than they used to be. Meetings feel flatter. The good ones are pulling back, and they can't quite put their finger on it, but they know something has shifted, and they're not sure what to do about it. They're not sure what the thing is that's shifted because, one, there's so many things that have shifted, and they can't figure out exactly which one it is. And every single time, I ask them the same question. When was the last time you talked to your team about AI? And the expression on their faces changes because there's always a pause. And then a version of, well, we did an all hands meeting a while back, or our CEO sent out an email about it, or we have a Slack channel where people share things. And none of that is talking to your team about AI. And I would bet that most of you listening have given a version of one of those answers at some point. But here's the thing. I was just having a conversation with a dear friend of mine who is in the corporate space, and he was talking about all of his feelings around AI. And it was one of those, it came out of just a friendly conversation, out of just a normal frustration at work. And a lot of people are thinking, we don't like this. We don't want this to stay. This is not what we want. We don't want AI images. We don't want these magazines to have AI as what they're generating of what a real human is. We don't want all of the what everybody is calling AI slop out there, but it's getting harder and harder to see what is AI and what is real. And I think that really is the tension here is if AI can do just as good of job as me, what does that make me? And there is some purpose and those kinds of questions happening within your team, which is why as leaders, we have to step up and say, okay, what do we want this team to look like? Do I have great performers on my team that I want to keep? And this is where things like upskilling, extra training, um, talking about what is the next step for them is really important. And I don't see a lot of leaders doing that. They're getting through the day to day and going, okay, cool, we checked off all of our boxes for today. They're not thinking about a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, of if I have an amazing person on my team that I'm like, when I get promoted, I want to take this person with me, for example. How am I developing that person to be the person they need to be a year from now? So starting to kind of have that conversation with yourself of if everything worked out exactly like I wanted, this is a great question to ask about a lot of things in life, but if everything worked out exactly like I wanted, and I had the team that I wanted when I get to the dream that I have, maybe your dream is to be vice president, president, CEO, whatever it is for you who's listening right now, what would that team look like at the next step of that dream? Maybe you're not in leadership yet and you're trying to get into a manager position. What would my team look like in that manager position? And how can I start helping the people around me that I would take with me or that I would want promoted with me into that next step? Because this is going to start to change how you think about the people around you. So I want to name the 3 reasons leaders are going quiet on this right now. Because when you can recognize what you're doing, you have a much better shot at stopping yourself from doing it. And the first reason is that you don't have an answer. And you have been trained, especially if you came up through a serious corporate environment, never to speak unless you have a clear, defensible position, because we don't want to be wrong, especially when we're in leadership. The whole machinery of how you became a leader rewarded you for not getting in front of things you could not fully back up. So now, when the ground is shifting and nobody has clean answers, your training tells you to just sit here and wait. So you wait, and then months go by. Nobody said anything. Things are changing constantly. There's always a new thing. I mean, if we just talk about one AI system like Claude or ChatGPT, we're updating those almost daily because they're dropping new things. So how can anybody keep up? How can leaders keep up? How can the people that we're trying to teach to use AI keep up? The second reason is that you're afraid of overpromising. You don't want to stand in front of your team and say, AI is not going to change your job, because in your gut, you've seen it and you know that that might not be true. You don't know how it's going to change their job. You don't know whose job it's going to change. And you don't want to be the person who lied to a room of people who ideally you respect. So you say nothing. And then the third reason is that you're afraid of underpromising. You don't want to say some of your jobs are probably going to change significantly because you don't want to scare your team. Or more honestly, you don't want them spinning up their resume and their LinkedIn profile and walking out the door to a competitor. So again, you say nothing. And these are 3 reasons with the same outcome of silence. And sometimes the corporate version of silence, which is the cheerful, hands on, everybody talks about something because they're just doing the motions in the meeting, saying that AI is a tool and not a replacement. And then everybody goes back to their desk knowing perfectly well that this is not the whole story that we're having a conversation about. So let me give you a sense of what is happening in your team's head while you have been measured and thoughtful about your response to AI. A 2026 analysis found that the share of workers who fear AI will make their jobs obsolete has climbed to 40%. That's up from 28% just 2 years ago. 60% of American workers now believe AI is going to eliminate more jobs than it creates over the next year. Almost 7 in 10 employees, so 69%, expect AI driven layoffs at their company within 3 years, and just under half are personally afraid of losing their own job to it. So there's a lot of people in the space that are like, I don't understand how this works. It's moving so fast, I can't keep up with it. There's so many things that my team is telling me. My friend that I was just telling you about that I was speaking with was like, we're getting pushed on every single day in every one on one meeting to say what we've done to do something with AI. How have we been more efficient with AI? What have we done to do X, Y, and Z? And he's like, nobody's telling us about this. Nobody's training us on this. They're just handing us the tool, giving us a login, and going, hope you figure it out. And if you think about it, it's silly because there are so many companies that are doing it this way. And if you're at a company who is training in AI and giving their people these resources, fabulous. Type in the comments. We'd love to hear where that's happening. But it's few and far between. Most of the time, there's a couple people on your team who know AI well, or are the nerdy people who are getting into it. And they're getting asked the questions of how do you use this from people around the office. Or the opposite problem where people are just saying, I will use it as little as possible at work. And then I don't touch it the rest of the time. I don't care about it. I don't want to care about it. If I ignore it, it's that object permanence. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And as much as we want to say that that's only something that kids do, adults do it all the time. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. If I don't play with it, it's not going to hurt me. And the reality is that AI is here to stay. Anytime that we take anything out of a box, out of the proverbial, okay, next thing, we're going to have these things where we can't put it back into the box. We have the technology now. This is like saying, well, people wanted landlines and they got mad about not having landlines when cell phones came out. We can't put the cell phone back into a box and go backwards. We have to move forwards. And I mean, we've seen this with BlackBerry. They were like, no, nobody's ever going to overthrow us because we were the first to market. We were the first to do this. And then they were overthrown. I haven't seen somebody carry a BlackBerry in probably 15 years. And that's what we're seeing because the same thing happened when horses and buggies changed for cars. There were cities that outlawed cars in order to keep the jobs for the people that drove buggies. And so when you think about it like that, like that seems so silly. Why would you do that? We think that now because we have the advantage of looking backwards. But we don't have the advantage of looking backwards on the AI front. So as leaders, as people who are trying to up their career and do the best thing for themselves as well as the people around them, we have to start thinking about how do we prepare ourselves first, because we can't save people if we don't save ourselves first. And then how do we help the people around us upskill, learn new things, try these things? And then what are the things that we're like, hey, these are the rules around this? So there's some new things coming into the art space where AI images are going to have code put into them. I think Google is the first one to start this, where it's going to have code that you can't take out, you can't scrub it off, you can't edit it out, that it will be able to read when that image is rendered to know that that's not by a real artist, that's by AI, which is brilliant because now we're finding ways to protect the people that we're losing in this process. So if we think about art specifically, and I think that this is one of the biggest issues that I hear about a lot is, well, graphic designers, photography, artists, painting, all of that stuff is going away because they can't make any money doing what they did. So what is that shift going to be? We don't know yet. And so being aware of these things and how it is very much affecting people emotionally, physically, psychologically, mentally. All of these pieces are important to be considerate when you are leading people, because people still have emotions that, whether they hide them or not, are still there. And these people that are giving these facts to us, they're not strangers, by the way. These are the people in your meetings, the people on your team channels, the people you walk past at the office. And here's the one I really want you to sit with, is that 24% of workers say AI is currently and actively harming the mental health we were just talking about. Not might harm their mental health, is. Not maybe down the road, it's right now harming their mental health. And some of those reasons is because it is being shoved down people's throats with no reason why. They're just like, just adopt this, just do this. And here's the part that should land for the leaders specifically. A recent enterprise survey found that only 26% of employees who actually use AI at work say their leadership is consistently aligned on a strategy for it. 3 out of 4 people using these tools every day cannot tell you what their company actually wants from them or where it is going. So no one knows. No one knows why are we using this? Why are we learning this? Why are we investing in this? Because honestly, most people don't even know how it works. We are currently recording this episode in June of 2026. Cowork for Claude came out mid-April 2026. And I can tell you, as somebody who builds a lot of things within AI, that there is massive changes that I could not do 6 months ago. And people ask me on calls when I'm training AI all the time, can I do this? And I'm like, currently you can't do this. In 6 months from now, though, we might be having a totally different conversation. So there is no way to know what can and can't be done, but we can see the patterns. And that's what LLMs are. They're pattern matchers. They're picking the next best thing. They're looking at the whole landscape of things and saying, here's what this looks like, which is great in a lot of different ways, especially from a data perspective. Being able to look at data in a way that it's harder to do as a human. And so, what are the benefits of using AI? And I always tell people, think about AI like a smart teenager that you would not trust to leave your living child with. And the more you can think about it like that, the more you can start to wield it as a tool versus, oh my God, this is going to take over everybody's job. I think that people, especially big companies, ran into this and went, oh, we're going to invest in this and then we're going to save all this money by firing these people. Okay, there might be some people that become obsolete because of it, or their pieces of their job become obsolete. But this is where we start to have to, as managers and as leaders, how are we measuring what is human driven and what is technology driven? What part of your job can you sit and tell me what part of your job requires a human, like really requires a human? Because a lot of people are like, well, this piece, because I'm the one talking about it. Could I put a voice on an AI bot and I talk about it? A good amount of times I can. So, what are the things that only you can do as a human? These are the things that we need to be talking about when we're talking about upskilling. This is where soft skills come in. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I want to reiterate it if you haven't heard that episode, is that soft skills and hard skills were named because of the military. Soft skills do not mean that you are soft, that you are squishy. Soft skills was named because it was anything that didn't have to do with working with metal. Hard skills were metalworking. Soft skills were everything else. And now communication, creativity, out of the box thinking, innovation, those things live in soft skills world. And those are the things that we need in order to use AI effectively and efficiently. So your team is not asking you for a roadmap of exactly what's going to happen. They're asking you for a sentence. A sentence is the difference between trust and fear in a moment like this. And most leaders are still trying to draft a roadmap before they are willing to say the sentence. So let me talk about why silence costs you so much and why your team is reading it the way they are reading it. So I want to give you a simple frame. And you don't need any background in psychology or research to get it. We would rather hear bad news than no news. And that's it. That's the whole story here. Think about your own life for a second. If your doctor calls you and says, your tests came back, I want to talk you through the results with you, your stress levels go through the roof. But the second they tell you what they found, even if the news is not exactly what you wanted to hear, something in you settles a little because you know now you're not spinning up the story however you want. So you can plan, you can act, you can decide what to do next. The silence in between, in that not knowing space, is almost always worse than the answer itself. When I was coaching entrepreneurs and doing business training for them, one of the things that I would always say when I'd come in and be a CMO for a company is you have to tell the story. Because if you don't tell the story other people will tell is always going to be worse than the one that you would tell. That's why we have to think about what are the things that we're talking about? What is the story we want this to be around? What do we want to be remembered by as a company and then as the leader themselves? It'd be much better if, as a leader, if you came into a room, even if your company is like not sure what they're doing with this, and you're like, I don't know either. Being honest about that and going, hey, this is what we're being told to implement. Here's some of the goals that we have spoken about. And we'd like to see what you can do with this. We don't know exactly what the next step is going to be or what this is going to mean, but here's how we upskill in this area. And here's some other things that we're seeing. Here's some other ways to make you more human in your role. So when you're doing your reviews next time, thinking about separating technology skills from human skills. But when we talk about knowing, there's a lot of research behind why this is true, and I'm not going to drag you through all of it, but the short version is that our minds are constantly trying to predict what's coming next. That is just how we are built. And when people who are supposed to know something go quiet, our minds do not sit politely and wait for them to speak. They fill in the silence on their own. And they almost always fill it with the worst possible interpretation. So think about it like if you have kids or if you've been in a situation where you were texting somebody on a date and they didn't text you back, or you heard that somebody got into a car accident and it's the same kind of car that your parents have. You're going into worst case scenario because that's just how brains are built, and your people are doing the same exact thing. And that is exactly what's happening for your team while you have been thoughtfully drafting your position on AI. You think you're being measured, or that you're protecting them from a half-baked answer that you would have to walk back later. But when you think about it, they appreciate that you're not jumping to conclusions and just giving them something. They want you to give them what you know now, because you're probably going to have to walk back some of it of, oh, here's what we think's going to happen. Here's our hypothesis. We can be scientists in this. This is our hypothesis of what's going to happen. And now we're going to go and try that. And if it doesn't work, we have to go back to the drawing board and hypothesize again. And I'm hoping that when we start to get into this AI piece, that we start to think like scientists in the office again, because of the fact that we've created cultures across the globe that I cannot fail when I go towards something. We teach babies to walk and we clap when they fall down and they get back up. And then you get into real life, into corporate, and you try something new that you've never done and you fail at it, and people go, oh my God, you should have known that. Oh my God, you should have gone and done that. And we're like, but I didn't know. Now I know better and now I can do it better. And so a lot of people practice in silence because of the fact that they're trying to get it right, or they fail and they don't tell anybody. And some of those failures are the things that end up being the big next discovery. There's so many of these. These are some of my favorite stories. Doritos were leftovers of a different menu item at a Disneyland restaurant. in Frontierland. And they decided to cut off the um, corners, and they were like, well, somebody in there was, what do we do with this? We don't want to throw these away. Like, this is such a waste. So they ended up putting some powder on them, and ta-da, Doritos. But nobody would have done that had there not have been some kind of failure, because we're wasting, and somebody trying to be innovative in that. And they could have easily failed at that and not been able to figure something out. So let's talk about all of these things, because this is, LinkedIn, you doom scroll LinkedIn, and there's a whole layoff news cycle all the time. What are their friends seeing in adjacent industries? And they have their own quiet ambient fear of what's going to happen to them. So having these conversations is very, very useful, even if you don't know exactly what's happening next. Because your silence is not neutral. Your silence is loud. It is the loudest thing in the room. And the longer you wait, the more the worst case scenario interpretation locks in. So let me give you a concrete picture of what that is actually doing on your team, because I think the data on its own does not quite capture what we're doing. Because I've coached people who are exquisitely talented, who are quietly looking for new jobs right now, not because they want to leave the company they're at. Sometimes they really love the team that they're on, but because their current leader has not said anything substantive of AI in 9 months. And they have decided on their own that the silence must mean something is being kept from them, that they're being not understood, their job security is not there. So of course, when you don't feel secure, you're going to go look for the next thing. And the leader in most of these cases is not planning anything dramatic. They don't even know that the person is considering leaving. But the leader just does not have answers for what's going to happen yet. And that silence has already triggered a strategic decision in someone they were planning to promote. So these are the things that I see all the time. And I hate that sometimes I can't talk with multiple people in a business when I work one-on-one with somebody, because of the fact that a lot of times people are making assumptions about what's going to happen. Leaders make assumptions about what higher management's doing. People under leadership make assumptions about what the leader's thinking. And a lot of these things, this all comes back down. This whole conversation could be a one sentence podcast of communicate better with others. Period. If we would communicate better, if we would ask questions, if we would be open to conversation without shutting people down, this would solve itself. We would start to go, okay, hey, no, we don't know. Hey, we are probably going to let you go in the next 6 months. This is a great time to be upping your resume, where we'd love to help you find your next position. Oh, hey, this is going to eliminate this position in this department, but we have this other department that you are really made for, and this would be a promotion for you. These are conversations that we could easily be having that we choose not to have, because we just don't know. We're just like, oh, well, we're just going to sit here and wait it out and hope for the best. And that normally doesn't work. Remember that out of sight, out of mind? If I just pretend like it doesn't exist, it's not going to exist. This is what we're talking about. But I've also seen what happens to the people on your team who are the most afraid. They don't upskill. They start to protect the territory inside. So they're going to claw in what they can, and they do all the work themselves so that no piece of it can be automated. They're like, this is mine, this is what I'm going to do. And they're not learning how to use the AI skills, because then ideally that makes it to where I can't be the person who gets replaced. So they're not documenting their processes, and they're gatekeeping information. So now you've got this brain trust of things that are happening in here of like, okay, here is what I'm doing, and I can't actually teach anybody else how to do this, because somewhere in their gut they've decided that the only safe move is to make themselves so essential that nothing can replace them. And that looks like dedication from the outside, but it's really fear of learning these new things. and is quietly killing your team's ability to learn from each other, share knowledge, and to grow overall. Which also means that these same people get stuck in this position and have a hard time getting promoted later. And then there's a third group. It's the smart, ambitious ones. The ones who used to pitch ideas, who used to volunteer for the cross-functional thing, who used to say what they thought in meetings, and they're going quiet. They've noticed you do not have a clear position, and they don't want to be the one out on a limb when the official one finally arrives. So they're waiting and watching, and they want to learn from you because now they've stopped offering to do anything new because they don't know where your position is. And that's the part that should haunt you a little bit. You end up with a team full of people who used to be brave, who are now strategically silent because you were strategically silent first. And that's how silence spreads. It becomes like a disease of, I don't know what's happening, so I'm not going to say anything. And then the stories start to cultivate. And then you've got those little whispers in the hallways. Those little, oh, yeah, are we going to lose our jobs? What's this going to mean? Oh, this company just let go 30,000 people. What's going to happen to us? The good news I don't want you to miss is that this is also where the fix starts. The minute that you start saying something real, something that is like, this is where we're at, even if it's imperfect, this breaks the silence. And your team's minds finally have something better to work with than the worst case version they've been writing on their own. Now, depending on how long you've been letting them write that story, it's going to have to take some time to overwrite it. But we have to have a conversation. So we're going to talk about what to actually say. And I'm going to give you a script in a minute. But before I do, I want to be clear about what your team is asking you for, because most leaders get this part wrong. They're not asking you for predictions. They know you do not have those. And if you tried to give them, they would not believe you anyway. They're not asking you for a roadmap. They know you don't have one of those either. They're not asking for certainty. They are asking you for three things, and only three things. The first thing is acknowledgement. They want to hear out of your mouth that you see what they are seeing, that you're not pretending it is not happening, and that you understand the ground is moving and you're not above it. The ground is moving under everybody, and we're all in this little earthquake of what the heck's going on. The second thing is honesty about what you do not know. Not a vague, well, the future is uncertain, specific things that you know. Naming the actual things that you know and that you don't have answers to. Because the second you name an unknown out loud, it stops being a terrifying unknown and becomes a known one. You're still in the dark, but at least now you're in the dark together. They're not thinking, oh my God, my boss knows all these things that are going to happen. They know exactly who's going to get laid off. They're already planning things. Because then every move you make, every word you say, every slight difference in your connotation, in your voice, in your tone is going to be taken as, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job tomorrow. And people who are worried about losing their job tomorrow are not giving you their best work today. And the third thing is a commitment about how you're going to lead through this. And notice how I said how, not what. They're not asking what you're going to do. They're asking you who you're going to be. The commitment is about your posture, not your plan. So who are you going to be in this? I promise that as soon as I find things out, I will tell you those things. I am going to be the person who helps pioneer these things. If I see something new or a new feature that comes out that I want to share with you, this is the Slack channel that it's going to be in. And that's it. They want acknowledgement, honesty about the unknowns, and commitment about how you're going to posture yourself in that leading. So here's a quick script, and I'm going to read it slowly so that you can write it down, you can go back in the show notes and listen to it. Is I want to talk about AI. I have not been talking about it much, and I want to name that because I know it has been loud in everyone's head, whether or not we have been saying it out loud. Here's where I am. Now you're going to talk about where you're at. I do not know exactly what AI is going to change about our work in the next 18 months. I do not think anyone does, and I would be a little suspicious of anyone who tells you they do. Here's what I do know. We're going to insert what you do know. I'm not going to pretend this is not happening. I'm going to tell you what I learn as I learn it, including the parts I do not have answers to. I'm going to fight for your development because the version of this team that is still here in 3 years needs to be a team that grew, not a team that hid. And I'm going to keep this an open conversation. If you have a fear, a question, an idea, my door is open. I would rather have the messy conversation now than the quiet one later. I'm not going to have all the answers. None of us are. But I'm going to be in this with you. And we're going to talk about it out loud. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Make it the version that is the best for you. It can be shorter, it can be longer. And even if you have to read this, of like, here's the things that I want to say, and I want to make sure that I hit all the beats. You don't need slides. You don't need to have a follow-up email. And you don't need supporting data for this. You just need to look at your team in the eye, say those words, and then sit in the quiet that comes after, because they will need a minute to take it in. And let them have it. Let them ask questions. And then you do it again next month. One meeting does not undo 9 months of silence. So you're not trying to fix this in a single conversation. You're rebuilding trust, and trust gets rebuilt through repetition. You keep showing up the same way. You keep saying the next true thing, and over time, the people who used to be quiet start to come back into the conversation. Keep the door open of having those open conversations. I love the idea of having a box somewhere in the office where there's not a camera watching it. There's nobody who could know that you stuck something in there, and you pop something in it, or a form that somebody can fill out that has no name connected to it, so that all of these questions, they have the ability to be anonymous in it. Of like, here's the questions that I have. Here's the things that I'm seeing. Here's things that I'm worried about. So you can start to get a full picture, and it's going to take time. People are not going to go, oh my God, my boss has changed overnight. This is great. I have all of these ideas. It's going to take time of doing this over and over and over again. And you're going to have to stay committed as the leader to go, okay, I did it the first time. Okay, nothing's changed on my team yet. Okay, I did it the second time. Okay, it doesn't seem like anything's changed. And start to feel the warmth as it gets more and more. Because you're expecting to do this, a lot of times people are expecting to do this. And they want it to be like a pot that boils. And it's that old saying, a pot watched never boils. So say the things, do the things, show the actions, and then let the pot boil on its own. It's going to get there. People are going to start to feel more comfortable. These things are going to be more integrated into our world. And then you're going to get to look back at this moment and say, hey, we made something amazing because we took the time to talk about it. And a quick word for the leaders who are sitting there thinking, well, but what if they ask me a question I can't answer? You say, I don't know yet. Here's what I am doing to figure it out. I'll come back to you when I do know by this date. So even if I don't know by that date, I can say, hey, we still haven't figured it out yet. And then you come back and you tell them what you know. And the most underrated leadership skill in the entire stack is keeping a small promise on time. So I have kiddos, and one of my favorite books is The Magical Yet. It's all about what hasn't happened yet. We don't know what's happening yet. We don't know what's happening closes the door. I don't know closes the door. I don't know yet, which means that I'm keeping that door open for that information to come in. And one last thing, if you're listening to this and you're not in a senior role, you can still do this. You can do it for your peers. You can do it in your team channel. You can be the one who names the thing that everyone else is dancing around. You don't need the title to break the silence. You need the courage to go first of, hey, here's what I know. Here's the things that I'm seeing. Maybe you're the person on the team that everybody's coming to that knows how to build out the AI, that you're like, this is fun, this is interesting. Maybe I've been vibe coding some things, and people are coming to you for the answers. And you go, I don't know that yet. Here's the things that I do know. This is a great time if you are that person. Start a LinkedIn newsletter. Start talking about it. Start being the person that people come to for that information. And if you don't know where to start with the AI conversation with your team, I would love for you to schedule a call, take the clear audit that's below, and let's have a conversation about what that could look like to have that conversation with your team. To prep for that, to say, okay, Kabrina, you didn't talk about this specific scenario that's happening in my team. How do I work around this? How do I talk around this? How do I have that conversation with the people that I'm trying to lead or the people that I have on my team, even if you were not the leader and you're like, hey, I need to have this conversation. This is a great place to start because we can absolutely do that so that you can stop the silence and we can write that specific thing for you together. So this is where you get to stop being silent because your team and the people around you are not asking you for a perfect plan. They're asking you for a couple of sentences. So let's go ahead and give that to them. Thanks for coming this week to Full Strength Leader, and we will see you in the next episode. That's a wrap on today's episode of Full Strength Leader. Take the lesson from today into your leadership this week and see what magic happens. If this episode hit home, I want to hear from you. Drop your questions, your reaction, or your biggest takeaway on Spotify in the comments under this episode. I read every single one, and your questions shape what we talk about next. And if you thought of someone during the show, do me a favor and share this episode with them, and don't forget to follow along so you never miss an episode. You can find me to connect and work with me directly at KabrinaAshley.com. Full Strength Leader starts here. We'll see you next week.